So today we're going to talk about patch notes, because the PvE notes got released. And for those of you who don't know, the PvE notes generally end up being pretty much the exact patch notes. And so let's take a look at it. I'm sure some of you have already seen some of this stuff, but just in case you haven't, agent updates, let's hear what they have to say, to be honest, because that's always interesting. This patch, we're looking to address some issues in the balance of power between Sentinels, especially Cypher and some other agents on the roster. Sentinels often craft very deliberate setups only to have agents like Raze, Sky, and Fade destroy them with typical utility use. In this patch, we're updating Cypher's trapwire to sway these interactions more in his favor and to encourage enemy agents to have to be more intentional and deliberate if they aim to use their utility to counter Sentinel setups. And so, for Cypher, the trapwire has changed. It's decreased the time until the trap concusses a captured enemy from 3 to 1.5 seconds. After concussing an enemy or an enemy in the trap was killed, the trapwire no longer destroys itself, but instead rearms after 0.5 seconds, allowing it to ensnare another enemy, and the duration of the tag slow when hit by the trap is increased from 0.75 to 2 seconds. This is a pretty major buff for the trapwire in all instances. And as mentioned, they have changed Sky and Fade in terms of the Trailblazer and the Prowler to just make it harder for them to destroy the traps as well. As you can see here, the collision, so that it will go under trapwires placed at mid-height for the Skydog, and for Prowlers, they'll go over ones placed at foot height and under ones placed at head height. And this is a pretty significant buff for Cypher. You can start imagining certain things like this playing out where, let's say I put down this kind of trap. A very difficult trap to actually come up and destroy before you actually hit it, right? So often you're going to hit this trap before you can actually destroy it, which obviously means that then you could die to a Cypher, over here putting down a cage, right? Putting up the cage and shooting you whilst you come into the trap. And maybe your team decides, oh, we don't want to go in, right? So your team decides to, okay, we're just going to leave, la 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 la, whatever, right? Well, then this trip stays up, right? So if you're this Cypher at this point, this trip has gone off. You've maybe got a kill from it, right? And then your opponents leave and you still got this trip in B main, which means then you can perhaps leave B main and know, like, hey, if they ever come back, I've still got this trip here, right? That never left. And that's a massive, massive deal. It will also potentially mean for certain kill trips that you might be able to get multiple kills from them, right? You assume, again, if someone is running in here and you're just waiting to kill someone running into this trip, right? They don't destroy it, you kill them before you do, and then, Johnny Idiot, their teammate, comes running up the same way, and then also potentially might die to the same trip. It probably won't happen a ton, but it will be very funny when it does. So is this the buff that completely changes Cypher and makes him as good as Killjoy? For me, probably not. But it will be a very significant buff, I think. And I think for maps like Split or Breeze, where Cypher was maybe already that first pick, instead of being like maybe you play Cypher, but maybe you don't play a Sentinel on that map, Cypher might be like, oh no, yeah, play Cypher on that map now. And maybe on some other maps as well, where if there's enough good trips that like won't get broken often, or, could survive the first person hitting them, maybe you would see quite a bit more Cypher. And Raze has been nerfed in this as well, so Raze will have to be more precise with her paint shells in order to deal damage to enemies, including destroying enemy traps. Additionally, Raze will need to be more intentional in picking between using the blast pack for mobility or damage. So primary grenade explosion radius is down to 5.5 meters, secondary also down from 6 to 5.25. The explosion minimum damage for both of them is also down to 1 instead of 15, and the damage multiplier to enemy utility is down from 250 to 100. When I'm looking at these changes for Raze, of course, the radius of the explosions and the minimum damage will impact it, I'm sure, somewhat. It's difficult to kind of really know how many times that will mean, you don't get a kill, whereas you would have before. But the multiplier to enemy utility will, I think, have an impact, particularly in the interaction with the Killjoy lockdown. Because right now, a Raze nade will just destroy a Killjoy lockdown, really, if it's just in the vicinity of it, because that multiplier is so high for the Raze nade. But now that it's back at 100%, you probably won't be able to destroy a Killjoy lockdown with just a nade on its own. And for, high level play, we were seeing certain teams where they would put their Raze over towards the C site whenever the attacking team had a Killjoy lockdown, because then you could just bank a Raze nade off the wall and destroy that Killjoy lockdown with just the nade, right? That probably won't be the case anymore, and so for any maps where Raze and Killjoy interact or are both played quite often, like Lotus, that might be a significant change. Now, the other change here is to the blast pack. The satchel doesn't deal damage until fully armed, and the satchel arm time has increased from 0.5 to 1.5 seconds. Now, you might think, what the hell does that mean? But what it means is the time it takes the satchel to beep, right? So a satchel won't deal damage until it beeps, basically. And now it takes 1.5 seconds before it starts beeping, right? So if you just, threw a satchel out here, and just quickly went like that, that's not dealing damage anymore, whereas it might have done before. Whereas now, you have to wait that long for it to actually deal damage. And then finally we have the judge as well. So with the change below, we're sharpening the judge's identity as a hunker down style shotgun by reducing some of its effectiveness whilst moving. With the reduced mag size, we're hoping to create more opportunities for enemies to catch a person reloading their judge, as well as nudge the person with the judge to be more efficient in order to get multi-kills. So the mag size has gone from 7 to 5, the jumping spread has increased, and the running spread has also increased. And you can see this with how the spread on your judge crosshair acts like this, right? So you can go from crouched, where it tightens up, you got your standing one, you get running, and jumping, it gets really big as well. And you'll see this in the shotgun spread. If I shoot whilst crouched, you'll see, you know, it kind of goes pretty close together. If I'm standing, it's still pretty decent. If I am running, then, you know, it's okay. It's not too bad. I would still say that this is still going to be decently effective. But if you are jumping, it's all over the place, right? The jumping judge days probably aren't the best way to go anymore, because you can really see the difference from even just standing to jumping. And for you Raze mains out there, yes, that also means when you are satcheling, it is the jumping accuracy of the judge that you will get, so it won't be very good at all. Rest in peace the days of the YZ attack side judge on split. I don't think we'll be getting that too much anymore. But with that said, I still think, you know, defense side sitting in a corner with your judge is still going to be inherently unfair and incredibly difficult to deal with, because the judge still is inherently unfair at those close angles. So some pretty interesting changes. I really like the Cypher stuff. The judge stuff is okay, but I don't think fully solves the problem. Let me know what you think in the comments down below.